In today's episode, we discuss dopamine and how to fix your brain, the carnivore diet, the dangers of sugar, the importance of mindset, and who really runs the medical and education industries. I really think you'll enjoy today's episode, and if you do, please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice, and I hope you enjoy the show. Today's show is brought to you by Icepod, finally an affordable, portable, and effective way to get the benefits of cold water immersion in the comfort of your own home. I opted for the Pro Bundle, which includes the Icepod, a water circulating pump, a special insulated lid, and a thermometer to check the temp of your water. Even in Georgia, the Icepod keeps my water between 60 and 70 degrees, and when I load it up with a 36-pack of water bottles that I use and refreeze after each session, I can easily get it around 50 degrees for the perfect cold water immersion experience. Despite being light and portable, the Icepod is super durable, and it's the perfect solution for anyone who wants to experience the benefits of cold water immersion without spending thousands of dollars for a home water chiller or trying to DIY your own. Cold immersion can help with recovery and muscle soreness, raise dopamine levels, help you wake up and be more alert, help you to burn more calories, mobilize brown fat, and more. Visit podcompany.com and use my special promo code SHANE50107 for $10 off your order, and each sale helps to support the show as well. Stay cool out there, people. Are you looking for the perfect high-protein snack that isn't loaded with stuff like MSG, nitrates, and sugar? Carnivore Snacks is the perfect high-protein snack made from quality grass-fed beef and salt. That's it. Each bag uses 1 pound of high-quality beef, lamb, pork, or chicken, salt, and nothing else. Aside from being easy, healthy, and convenient, they also taste great. These snacks are not just another jerky. They are way better. Give a bag a try, and I know you'll keep coming back. Check out Carnivore Snacks, spelled with an X.com, and enter coupon code SHANE05137 for 15% off your order, and each sale will help support the Renaissance Wisdom podcast as well. Welcome to the Renaissance Wisdom podcast, where ancient and modern wisdom come together to create a better way of living. I'm your host, Shane Sorensen, and each week we speak with successful people from a plethora of disciplines in search of wisdom from their own lives. Your own personal renaissance begins today. Let wisdom be your guide. Hey everybody, welcome to the Renaissance Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Shane Sorensen. I'm here with today's guest, Sarah Zaldivar. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Shane. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I'm excited to get another carnivore person on the show. I know we talked a little bit, off camera here to start about some of my experiences. So excited to, pick your brain on that and get some of your feedback and experiences on that as well. So to start out, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Yeah, sure. So, where should I start? So currently I'm a nutrition professor, I guess. This is the part that people understand easily. It's like, okay, you're a nutrition professor at Miami-Dade College. But really, I feel like that's the smallest part of what I do. I mainly focus my energies on being a content creator, a nutritional researcher. I put a lot of nutrition information about the carnivore diet, exercise, and food addiction, which everybody hates to hear that word. Nobody thinks they're an addict until they actually try to stay away from the food, and it's like, whoa. But mainly, what I would say is that I'm focused a lot on optimizing dopamine and fixing that dopamine deficit that people
Mm-hmm.
live their lives not even realizing they have that, because that's the root cause of why you can stick to your diet, why you can make enough money, why you can't stand up for yourself, why you don't have confidence, that dopamine deficit. And because of our addictions, whether it's the video games or social media or carbohydrates and the sweet taste, food addiction, whatever the case may be, we've destroyed our dopamine, right? We've destroyed our baseline level of dopamine, because every time you release some dopamine, especially from let's say cake or cupcake or playing a video game in an unnatural way, which means too much too soon of dopamine, it actually ends up destroying the receptors that dopamine have to bind to for you to feel the effects of dopamine. So you get a small burst of a dopamine hit. You feel good for a few seconds or maybe a few minutes, but then a few hours later, and then when you wake up the next morning, you don't have enough of the receptors that dopamine have to bind to in order for you to feel the mood and motivation effects of dopamine. So as addictions progress, your baseline level of dopamine over time drops and drops and drops and drops. And this is when now you're engaging in addictive foods or behaviors not to feel
Mhm.
high anymore. It's just to bring you back up to normal, to what it was before you started the addiction. So I would say the vast majority of my content lately has been focused a lot on dopamine optimization. Um, yeah, that's in a nutshell. If you want like the academic background, I have my bachelor's and my master's in nutrition and dietetics, and my doctorate, my PhD in exercise physiology and nutrition from the University of Miami. And I've just been in academia doing research and teaching nutrition and exercise physiology courses for decades now at the University of Miami and Miami-Dade College and DeVry University, and I and the American College of Sports Medicine, where I've conducted workshops for them, training potential personal trainers to not fail the
Mhm.
CPT exam, the personal trainer exam, because it's so hard to get that ACSM certification. It's like the gold standard, the hardest one to get. So, I've done a lot of the traditional ones. Um, and I have a lot to say about traditional academia. I don't know if you want to go there, but that's
I'm
me
with
in a
you.
nutshell. Huh?
I'm with you. We're definitely going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Something like I didn't even realize that you were working so much on dopamine currently, because that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and something I've been wrestling with. There's a couple things I wanted to add. So first off, I know we were talking off camera, and we'll talk about this later a little bit more too, that for a while I was doing like full keto carnivore, and I added fruit back in. So something that's interesting is when I was fully keto, and I did it for, it was probably, 3 months, 2.5, 3 months that I was doing full keto. It was amazing that I completely lost cravings for carbohydrates. Completely. Like my fiance could be sitting there. I would literally make her a bowl of this like really good carbonara that I make and hand it to her, and I'd just be eating a steak with avocado next to her. And I
Yeah.
there was no desire to take even a piece of the pasta, not even a taste. Like it was the weirdest thing that my desire for carbohydrates completely went away. No pasta, no bread, no anything. Then I started adding fruit back in, and as soon as I started adding fruit back in, like this past weekend, I had this craving. I was like, let's order a pizza. And we didn't order a pizza, but I was like this close to doing it because those
Yeah.
cravings were back. So it's interesting, right? I know a lot about dopamine as well, but I never really thought about that. And that makes a lot of sense. Is like, you
Yeah.
start out with the fruit, and then it's white rice, and then it's like pasta, and then it's processed bread, and then it's, candy, right? So it makes a lot of sense because your body's like, give me the next hit. And when I was doing keto, I had like a piece of, like, I don't, just like a piece of pineapple, like a really like a bite of pineapple. And I remember it was like the sweetest thing that I'd ever tasted. It was like I was eating a like a candy bar. And
Yeah.
I guess I never really thought about, how that plays in, the diet and
It
the
is the carbohydrate or the sweet taste both. Sweet taste is a characteristic of carbohydrate. It is the carbohydrates that we get addicted to, really. And a more lethal combination is when you combine carbohydrates with fats together, because this never happened in nature ever. And
hmm,
we're not equipped to deal with that. And studies consistently show this burst of dopamine. Rats consistently prefer the sweet taste by a large margin over heroin and cocaine. Not just cocaine. The cocaine studies are the old studies, but um, the newer studies that came out, I mean, kind of new, 2017, they've been replicated now using heroin and they all show the same exact results.
hmm,
Rats will consistently prefer the sweet taste even from artificial sweeteners, by a large margin over heroin. And so that makes sense when you remember that we never had this kind of sweetness in nature. Even up until the last 200, 300 years, we never had that, because it's only when we started hybridizing the fruits and making them larger with less fiber and
Mm-hmm.
more sugar content
Yeah.
did we really start having those in our food supply. But before those last 300 years, even the fruits that we did consume very occasionally, if you look up the history of them and you look at the wild versions of watermelon, bananas, pineapples, it's incredible how disgusting they were. All seedy, all fibrous, almost no sweetness. Even the berries, most of them were tart
Right.
or bitter, so, and very tiny. So we never really consume those foods. And so our brains aren't equipped to deal with that. And now that we have created these Franken fruits, which I don't think are natural fruits, I think those are all just, we created them. Now we're realizing, oh, not only is it not healthy for us, metabolically speaking, but we we get so hooked on them so quickly because we are always looking for calorically dense foods because we have ancient brains that evolved for the vast majority of the time, for 99.99% of its time, at risk of not having enough food, at risk of famine. And so it is, our brains are primed to always seek out calorically dense foods. This is why it's so easy to get hooked on foods. It's actually, and this is something that once you start diving deeper into the addiction literature, you notice how crazy this is. It's so much easier to quit alcohol. It's so much easier to quit smoking, heroin, cocaine, because you stop it and that's it. And people, everybody around you, they understand, okay, they won't, keep the stuff around you. You're not being targeted by ads 24/7, but it
Mm-hmm.
is a lot harder to stop the food addiction because it's everywhere. People don't understand how addictive it is. They're very casual in their approach towards it. And you've got $1 trillion food industry without any balances or checks hooking you from your from the
Right.
age of infancy, age of onset of a drug introduction is one of the single greatest determinants of how severe your addiction ends up being, you know and I know, I think people get put off by the addiction word because they have this idea like addiction means that's it, it's over, I can't overcome it. And obviously that's not true. It's there it is, we have to understand that it's not the end of the world if you get addicted. We all get addicted and then we can get sober. Vast majority of people eventually do get sober from their addictions anyway, if you look at the data. So it's like you can be aware that this is an addiction, and at the same time be aware that there's so much you can do. You can fix that dopamine deficit and you can overcome it rather easily, I think, once you have the tools.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it makes me think too when you said it's so much harder to break like a food addiction because also food is such a source of bonding for human beings, and it's probably something that goes all the way back to just the tribe, right? Like the tribe starts the fire and everybody gets together and shares a meal around the fire at the end of the hunt, but
Yeah.
when you want to meet up with someone that you haven't seen in a while, what's the first thing we always do? Oh, let's go grab coffee, let's go grab food, and it's so hard. I basically just only go to steakhouses now because at least there's an option. But I know even with steakhouses, right? It's some of them they come with sides, and you have to ask for no sides,
Mm.
and um, you have to be wary of like the oils that are used and how the
Right.
steak is actually prepared. So
The
it's
rub, the marinade.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean it's super difficult to, and I'm not like a very social person. I hang out with my fiance.
Me
That's pretty
too.
much it. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
I'm a recluse,
I
so
know.
it's a
There's
little
no
easier for
time.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I can only imagine, if I was a very social person, how difficult it would be because that's no matter what you do with someone, anytime you hang out, there's always food somewhere.
every single client of mine who tells me, "Oh, I have an active social life," they can never get fit, never.
Yeah.
Every single client of mine who likes to go out more than even just once a week or more than once a week to see friends, they never get fit. Those are the people that you will never see get fit. They just go through life looking average, basically, because even that tiny bit of discipline that they need to go from looking relatively good to looking amazing, they don't even have that when you go out like that. And you oh, friends and family and food, or people who label themselves as a foodie. What's a foodie? You're an addict. That's a foodie.
Yeah.
You
It
know?
yeah, I mean it's tough, and there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of the old adages about you are a amalgamation of like the 10 people that you spend the most time with. So yeah,
Right.
that's something
I
that we
thought it
have to
was
be.
5 people. Did
Maybe
we
it is
change it?
5.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
just saying. Okay.
But it is definitely, whether it's 5, whether it's 7 or 10 or 20, whatever it is, like it is true that the people that we spend around our time around, we pick up their habits, we pick up little, sayings that they have, we pick up their philosophies. So I think it's so important, and maybe something that's not emphasized enough to people, is you really do have to be careful about who you choose to spend your time with, because they
Yeah.
will shape you. We're just, as human beings, we're like designed to be these social creatures, and the people that you're around, you pick up things and you try to blend into the group. And
So true. We even have dedicated specialized brain cells or neurons called mirror neurons
mm-hmm,
that their sole purpose is to make us do and mimic what other people around us are doing or saying. That's how babies learn so many things very quickly, just by mimicking the adults or the other people in the room. So mirror neurons are very powerful. This is why when you join a community, so for example, with my coaching clients, like they have a group chat on Discord. And so now they know one another. And like once you identify with that community, you take on that identity. And that identity of that community is like we're fit, or we're gonna get fit, and we'll do whatever it takes. And like there's a certain kind of set of values in there where that you adopt, and it becomes easier for you to adopt it once you start to identify with this group of people.
mm-hmm. This conversation's got so many interesting like branches that I'm trying to stay focused. But I wanted to ask you a little bit more on the dopamine. So something that I've really been wrestling with on a personal level lately is like staying off the phone, right? And
Mm.
it's an addiction. Like it's a full blown addiction at this point. And most people have the same thing. I understand it's a common thing, but most people won't acknowledge it. Like I realize it.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of different things to, first off, like a lot of the way that I stay disciplined is I just remove things. So if something's bothering me, I just cut it out. It's just always been very easy for me to just make the decision of like, okay, this is a negative source of something for my life, so just you're gone. It's out. I'm not going to deal with it.
People too.
What's that?
People too.
Absolutely. That's a part of why I don't really carry a lot of friends, because
Yeah, me too.
for
I
me,
kind of got that from you. Yeah.
yeah, I always feel like I like people, like I like human beings, but human beings are messy and difficult. Like, and a lot of times through life, I'll have like a friend, and then they want to go do something, and you're like, hey, I can't tonight, and then they get like upset, and I was
Right.
like, I don't want to deal with your negative energy. Like it's not worth it to me. I'm very
Yeah.
self sufficient to basically have you try to guilt trip me because I can't go to this thing tonight, or I can't go get this food because I'm on a diet, or I'm not going to go drink with you tonight because I don't drink and that doesn't fit my lifestyle. And so it's just
Yeah.
kind of been easier for me to like just like disappear and kind of go
Yeah.
into my
Yeah, I
little,
agree.
but
Yeah. I have so much to say about that, but yeah, let's keep it
yeah,
focused.
with the phone thing, so it's really difficult, obviously, because of the social media. Like I need to do posts every day. I need to record. I need to. I use Instagram, for example, for a lot of like my networking and just sourcing guests and communicating. So just like selling my iPhone and getting a dumb phone is not an option. As
No.
much as I want to do it, it's not really. practical. I think it would hurt my productivity in the long run. So one of the things I tried to do was I got an Apple Watch, which I just never really needed a watch. And what I've been trying to do is like, all right, take the phone, and for example, at work, I leave my phone in the office. So I can
Mm,
still answer my phone if my boss calls. I can still, respond to my fiance, and like, um, and then I kind of try to take like, okay, I'm going to take a 15-minute break or whatever and have a snack, and I can do a post real quick. Or,
right.
and same thing in the morning. Like I try to put my phone in a drawer and just keep my watch with me. However, like that, there's still that, like, sometimes
Pull.
you just
Yeah.
you pick up your phone and you don't even think about it, and then you're doom scrolling for 30 minutes. What do you have any tips?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the brain rehab program that I put all my clients on, I filmed a YouTube video on that. It's basically you have to fix that dopamine deficit because
Mm-hmm.
you have some. Okay, whether it's from food, whether it's from the social media addiction, we've all destroyed some level of those dopamine receptors. They're called D2 receptors because dopamine is like a lock and key situation. It gets released and it has to attach to its receptor on the cell surface of the adjacent brain cell, right? So it gets released from a brain cell. It has to attach to the new receptor on the cell surface of an adjacent brain cell. So dopamine attaches to its receptor, which is D2 receptor. And that's when you feel the beneficial effects of dopamine. But you do have multiple receptors that also some of them play a role in addiction. You've got D1, D2, D3, D4, but the vast majority of the studies and the most powerful evidence we have with regards to addiction has to do with specifically the D2 receptor. It's that protein that seems to be the most important in addiction. So over time, as you get more and more addicted, the number of the D2 receptors on the cell surface of adjacent brain cells starts to dwindle down. So now, even if you're pumping out dopamine because you're having cookies, you have all this dopamine being released, but not enough D2 receptors for it to attach to so that you actually feel the high, right, from that dopamine. So this is how you build tolerance. Now you have, let's say you started with 5 D2 receptors. As addiction progresses, now you only have one. So now, in order to get the same level of dopamine hit in your brain, you want to increase the amount of cookies you're eating so that you release even more dopamine so that the frequency with which that dopamine hits the D1, the D2 receptor is increased because if the number of times you hit that receptor also increases the feeling of dopamine activity. And so this is how people build tolerance. But then after the cookies are done or the scrolling is done,
Mm-hmm.
very quickly afterwards, and even when you wake up in the morning, your baseline level of mood or your baseline dopamine
You
is
feel
determined
terrible.
by
You feel
you feel
terrible
terrible.
afterwards.
Why?
It's just,
Because you don't
yeah,
have enough D2 receptors.
right.
Because the less D2 receptors you have, the less likely you have this lock and key situation happening. So even though you have a certain pool of dopamine there, but there's not enough D2 receptors now to bind to, so you're feeling depressed, anxious, more likely to seek out more external dopamine hits because your internal dopamine system now is malfunctioning and it's hypofunctioning, basically. So you're living life with a dopamine deficit. So the only way for you to be able to resist the urges to scroll down and resist the urges to have that pizza and resist the urges for any addictive temptation is to go back and increase the number of D2 receptors. So you go back from the one that you have to bringing it back to 5. Obviously, this is a hypothetical
Mm-hmm.
number. It
I
could be
understand.
in the, I don't know, millions or trillions or more, you know?
Sure.
So how do you do that? Brain rehab program. Anything that is painful is going to trigger your brain to increase its production of D2 receptors so that at baseline you have a higher level of D2 receptors. Anything painful, like cold plunges, maybe fasting. I'd be careful if you have food addiction. Don't do. I wouldn't consider fasting a good approach to raise D2 receptors. That's not my favorite. Um, Meditation, but my favorite And what I think for most people who work with me because they want to fix the dopamine deficit, they want to get over their food addiction, and or even if they don't identify as an addict, like they just don't want to have cravings or they don't want to be binge eating, um, the best thing it would be exercise because that helps them drop all the weight and at the same time increase their dopamine baseline and fix that dopamine deficit. And then usually we go above and beyond. Like why just fix it? Why not just optimize for your dopamine?
Hmm.
So exercise, the longer and the more intense the exercise, the more of the D2 receptor upregulation you have. So in other words, the more intense and the longer the exercise, the higher your baseline dopamine level gets.
Hmm.
And this is where people lose it. It's like,
Sure.
you're gonna tell me I have to earn it, I have to move, and it's like, what about just weight training? It's like, no, you need also cardio. You need to, as a matter of fact, if anything, I would go with cardio first and weight training second. Ideally, you want to do both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, man, I don't know. I like doing all that stuff. I work out twice a day. I do my cold bath every morning. Um, and I think too, like just on a from a personal level, I have addiction in my family too. So I know
Mm,
that, and that's part of why I've never drank. I've never messed with drugs. I think there's a part of me that identifies that I have an addictive personality. Like even when I get into something, I heard a quote by Bill Gates one time, and he
mm,
said, "I don't have a TV." And the interviewer was like, "Why do you not have a TV?" And he's like, "Because he's like, I get obsessed with things." And he's like, if I find a show that I like, I'm gonna binge watch it, or,
yeah.
and I'm a little bit like that, but it's like I do get very into things when something is exciting to me. I put a lot of energy to it,
Yeah.
and
That's
it's
a good thing, right?
yeah, it's like
That's
I
how
guess it's a
you
double edged
can.
sword, right? Is
Mm.
that
So let me ask
curiosity, like,
you this,
mm-hmm,
because there are two ways to work out, right? So what does your workout program look like right now?
so I mean, right now, it's weight training in the mornings before work, and then usually after work, jujitsu in the evenings. Or if I can't make it to jujitsu, I may run once or twice a week too. And typically, when I run, I'll do like steady state. I'll run a 5K on the treadmill, or
There you have it.
mhm.
So are you progressing with your speed week by week?
There was a point where I was, but not really anymore. I guess I kind of fell into like that idea of just
Okay.
kind of maintenance.
So right now you're maintaining this level of baseline dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly that's not enough because you're still having the urges. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where people will be like, well, I already, work out because I get that a lot, a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
pushback when I'm like, push harder. But I don't know every person's exact baseline level of dopamine. The
Sure.
best way to determine that is their signs and symptoms. Okay, are you still having cravings? So that means we need to raise it even higher. Are you still having urges and temptations? We still need to raise it higher. It seems that once my clients get to 8 miles a day of intense training, most of them no longer binge or have cravings, including myself, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean 8 miles, I'm talking 8 miles in a very intense way. So the quicker you can get those done, ideally in less than an hour, which
Mm-hmm.
is very hard to do, I know, but maybe an hour and a half is better because if you're just walking 8 miles, that's not upregulating anything because you want to spend time under tension. It's only the time under tension. It's only those uncomfortable minutes that are kind of like painful or uncomfortable that triggers the brain to waste its resources on upregulating D2 receptors because the dopamine system is an anesthetic system. It suppresses the pain. And so it raises your pain threshold the higher your dopamine levels are and the
Mm-hmm.
more D2 receptors you have. So here's the solution. Whatever you're running at right now, let's say you're doing 5K in how much time?
20, 24, 25 minutes, something like that. I don't really
Okay.
push
So,
myself too hard.
well, that's the thing. You want that the pushing minutes. What I do with
Mm-hmm.
my clients I don't care how much they work out during the day. I tell them all of this is useless to me. Because if you're running 13 miles, but it's taking you 10 hours, that's not really what I'm after. I'm
Right.
after the time under tension. I have them track the number of uncomfortable minutes per day. And for my more advanced clients and for myself, what I do, I track two things. I track the very uncomfortable minutes. This is when I'm sprinting and I want to kill myself. And then I have another column, which is the number of uncomfortable minutes, but it's the kind of discomfort that I can stay at for like 30, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So I track both intensities. So you have to have those minutes of very uncomfortable um, minutes in order to upregulate your D2 receptors. And then as you get faster and faster and faster with your 5K, are you still having urges? Then add one more K and keep getting faster with that. It is
Hmm.
almost impossible to keep having temptations or urges or distractions at some point. Like there's no way because you upregulate your D2 receptor level to a certain level, everything else falls into place. And I keep discovering new things that change in my personality the higher I go with the D2 receptors or with the baseline level of dopamine. It's just incredible. The self confidence, no anxiety, no depression. Um, it's like I popped a couple of Adderall pills, but then there's no crash. That's the
Hmm.
beautiful thing. It's like clean cocaine, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it's very interesting. I keep saying, well, okay, then where's the limit? And I don't think there is. I think that's pretty much what David Goggins is trying to figure out, like where are the limits? And I don't think there are, you know? So I think you're doing the right thing.
Up
You
the
just have
intensity
to
then.
do up massively. Like
Yeah.
you
Okay.
want to feel like you're dying. So I get those I'm dying minutes. I get 20 to 25 minutes of those a day. But the way that I do them is like 10 minutes, I walk, sprint 10 minutes, I walk, or I'll do eight
Hmm.
minutes and I'll walk another 8 minutes, I walk 5 minutes, and so I do that, but I make sure every day I get those brutal, brutal minutes because that's the only thing that matters. Everything else, it's like you're just maintaining. The only time you upregulate is you got to give your brain a reason to waste its resources to increase dopamine. If it's not uncomfortable, why would it raise its dopamine? Why would it create more of an anesthetic effect, an anesthetic molecule? It means, right?
Hmm.
So you gotta get uncomfortable, and this is what people try to run all their lives away from, right? They're like, no, it's gotta be a better diet, a better hack, a better situation, maybe. And I get all of the ways that we try to weasel ourselves out of it because I used to be that person too.
We want it to be
I used to,
easy. That's the thing. Is like we just
yes,
we
that's
we crave ease and comfort.
yes, but if you really want ease and comfort, you have to get uncomfortable because otherwise your life is
Yeah.
gonna slowly unravel, as most people have discovered, right? So either way, you're gonna be uncomfortable. The trick is to choose your heart, be in control of the heart. And the
Mm.
beautiful thing is, I think eventually those uncomfortable minutes, you start to like them. It's almost like the sadistic, weird experience where it's not, your pain threshold goes up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So,
great advice, and it's funny you were definitely channeling your inner David Goggins there because before you even mentioned David Goggins, I'm thinking of him like you're gonna do 1,000 pull-ups and that's your warm-up, and then we're gonna do a
yep.
thousand more and like
That's what I listen to when in those minutes where I'm killing myself. I
yeah.
prepare my cardio playlist to so that it's David Goggins shouting at me in those those minutes, so I can hang in there for a few more minutes.
I know I've heard him say that he will look at like angry comments that people leave that they're like talking bad about him, and then he'll record himself reading them, and he'll go on a run for 3 hours, and he'll just be
Yeah,
listening to like the hateful comments as he's running. So
that is hilarious. Yeah, I don't do that. I just what I do, I'm visualizing. upregulation of my D2 receptors. That's all I'm doing, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just so exciting. And the more dopamine you start having, your personality changes. Like you're a completely different person for the better, you
Right.
know? And it's like, wow, this is amazing. I wonder what more I can get out of this. Let's do more. Let's do more, you know? So, yeah, I have yet to see a client of mine not completely cure their binge eating, their cravings, their addictions, um, but with without but by applying this method. Like you apply it, it is inevitable. It's going to work. It's just that the vast majority of people wildly underestimate what it actually takes to get there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful thing is as your intensity goes up and up, the time that you dedicate for working out remains the same. I mean, you can choose to go David Goggins and do 4 hours.
Yeah.
It's up to you. But even if you don't do that, you can just do 1 hour a day. But in that 1 hour where you were doing, let's say, the 5K, eventually you can do 6K, 7K, 8K, 9K, 10K. I mean, there are no limits. The fastest Usain Bolt, the fastest runner, hits a speed. I Googled it the other day. It was 20, I think 27 miles an hour can sprint, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're doing 5 miles an hour. It's like, oh my gosh, this is hard. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. You got the rest of your life to get to 20K. It's at 20 miles per hour. You can do it. What else you got to do? You know, what's the point of hopping on a treadmill or going out for a run if you're just going to maintain your dopamine levels or your fitness? Like, what's the point? You know, I love the quote by Tony Robbins: progress is the very foundation of happiness. That's what happiness is,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So if you're constantly maintaining, you eventually get bored with it and the aging process eventually takes hold. So now you're not even maintaining. Now it's even hard to maintain that, right? Because you're just getting older over time. So you want the rate of progress to be much faster than the rate of decay.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I love the mindset, and it's something I talk about in my book too. Like the Greek term eudaimonia, or this sort of state of flourishing that we reach when we're continuously making progress, right? And of course, you can never reach perfection. There's this blurred line somewhere that we're reaching towards, but it's that pursuit that gives us so much fulfillment and so much meaning in our life. So I think I
Yeah,
need to apply that into my fitness a little bit more too. Great
yeah, it
advice.
is. It's not just for that, it's for your finances, really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there is not one single area in your life that is not mainly determined by your baseline level of dopamine. Everything is determined by your dopamine levels. Because what you think you can accomplish in the next 3 months is determined on what you're looking at your abilities right now. But your abilities right now are limited by your dopamine levels. So if you quadruple that, that means you can quadruple your income. That means you can quadruple your fitness results.
It sounds like you have a book in the works. If you don't,
I guess I
you
should.
you need to write this book
Move
about.
over, Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, you need to write the book about dopamine, like why dopamine is everything, right? It sounds
It is,
you
yeah.
start
I have
writing.
so many things I gotta be doing. I just
Yeah.
had my assistant have a new project. Like, let's do a weight loss guide. Let's, I was starting putting out like things like that. But yeah, maybe then have him start writing because there's no way that I'm going to write like I'm gonna have to pull up the studies and have him write it for me because that's the only way it's gonna get done. But I think that's great because I don't think anybody is talking about this, especially in the space that I'm in, which is mainly carnivore. A lot of my audience is carnivore, and they
Hmm.
all talk about, how important it is to eat meat, blah, blah, blah. But it's like nobody can do it. So everybody's addicted. And so I
Sure.
feel like I'm the only person talking about the root cause of all of this stuff. And then as I've evolved, I've realized, wait a second, this is way bigger than food. This is this is everything. This is how much money I'm making. This
Yeah.
is my relationship, setting boundaries, um, getting comfortable saying no, getting comfortable confronting somebody because you literally it doesn't phase you. You're like very calm. You don't even feel anything if you're confronting somebody as long as you're in the right. It's everything.
Yeah. I'm signing up for the pre-order for the book. So
I'm
you
gonna,
got to you got to get working
I'm
on it.
on it. I'm on it.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to pick your brain on carnivore, just from some of your personal experience too. So I know you post a lot of the like kind of the before and after picture, right? And I'm assuming, is that like before carnivore versus after carnivore, or is that just
No,
um,
not all of it has been on carnivore. A lot of it has been from my weight loss. It's been, I think it's like what, 35 pounds, probably more,
mhm.
um, that I've lost. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of mindset and keto. The keto was a huge factor, and learning so much, just in general about, the importance of protein. And but I wouldn't say all of it is carnivore. I think most of it is from carnivore. Um, but yeah, like there's just so much goes into
Oh yeah,
transforming your body. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of mindset too. Yeah, I think that's my answer. I
I
don't know
got you.
what else. Yeah.
So I mean, with specifically with carnivore, how long have you been doing carnivore? And I know you said hubby, like your husband is also doing the carnivore thing, and he looks great, right?
Thank you.
How long have
Yeah.
y'all been doing that on a personal level?
It's so funny because he was more carnivore than I ever was. When I first met him, I was 26, and we have a 24-year gap between
Hmm.
us. Um, and so when I met him, he was already lifting for a long time, and he would just eat meats, especially lean meats. And the only vegetable he ate was a bit of spinach, on topped with, let's say, chicken breast or ground turkey. And I remember when I first we got together, it happened very quickly, and I moved in very quickly. And I remember telling him, like, you gotta have your fruits and vegetables. Meanwhile, I'm having bread and orange juice with my eggs for breakfast, thinking that
Right.
that's healthy because that's what I was taught, as a dietitian. That's what they tell you.
Yeah.
So, he never said the word carnivore. He wasn't thinking in terms of that, but he just kind of knew, being a bodybuilder, that you cut out the carbs, you stay trim. And so he did that. He would have a lot of snacks. So his son was living with us because when I met my hubby, his son was 16 years old. So he had like cereal and Ritz crackers and things like that around the house. And so my hubby would sometimes have those as snacks, after he comes home, he'll have dinner, but then like maybe he'll have a bowl of cereal or whatever, on and off, knowing that that's not ideal.
Hmm.
Then I convinced him to compete. So once he started competing, that's when all the crap, we got rid of everything. And also that was when, around that time is when his son got old enough to get his own place. And, so we didn't have to keep this junk in the house. And since then, he's definitely been very, very carnivore. Um, and yeah, I mean, he is going to turn 60 in December, and he rocks abs. He's shredded 24/7. Like he doesn't even care about competing anymore. He's like, what's the point? Because his business is doing so well now. And he's like, I don't want to do like a business in fitness, so I don't have a good incentive. He's already won so many shows. It's like, yeah, okay, I know I can win. So what? Like, what's the point of competing? So he's not even like having a goal of competing, and he just maintains abs just to feel good about himself and to feel good and be healthy. And he does that just by, yeah, mainly eating meats. The only thing is I'll make him keto cookies, which, by the way, I'm gonna make him today because tomorrow is his cheat day. So he'll have a cheat once a week, and it's keto cookies that are absolutely delicious. And he can do that, and yeah. So for me, it was so much more complex because I was brainwashed so heavily,
Yeah.
against carnivore, against anything that other than what the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics puts out. That's before I realized that they were in bed with the food companies. That's when you're young and you just, believe everything your professor tells you. And they never told us that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics actually invests in the food companies like Coca-Cola. Can you believe that? Our registered dietitians, the largest organization for registered dietitians, invests in Coca-Cola. And it's like they're on the same boards and they work hand in hand
Yeah.
together.
It's really
So,
incestuous.
oh,
it's so intermingled, and just the like
it
money.
is
Money
it
just
is so
pushes everything.
embarrassing to be a dietitian, right? It's like
Yeah.
imagine having those initials like RD. Like, do you know what that represents? Do you even know what does it mean to be a registered dietitian? Like, it's embarrassing,
Hmm.
you know? It's so yeah, like I definitely went through a phase. I was like, oh my gosh, I wasted so much time and money to become a dietitian. This is it's a tough pill to swallow once you really do your research.
Yeah. Well, and I guess like that was something I wanted to ask you about too. I mean, given that you're a professor, right? I mean, you're actually you actively teach. It
Right.
it kind of seems like carnivore, like, spits into the face of what I mean. It's
Right.
really it's complete opposite of like what you're told. Like the media tells you, doctors tell you, and I get it,
Yeah.
right? Like doctors don't really get training in nutrition, and I get like I understand the background. I understand how much money gets pumped in from pharmaceutical companies, and like the vested interest of people in power, and the money wants us to be fat, wants us to be sick, wants us to be addicted, it wants us to be uh
Yeah.
just basically sheep that are herded
Yeah.
around and told what to do and what to buy and to keep spending money. So I understand it's like this hedonistic kind of like treadmill that the money has kind of pushed us into. But I mean, how does it work? Like being a professor in nutrition and you're on a carnivore diet, because that certainly can't be what you're teaching, right? I mean,
Oh, that's everything I teach.
okay.
I would never, yeah. I imagine if with everything, like all my criticism of the Academy of Nutrition, Dietetics, all the interviews I've given, all the content I put out every day.
Hmm.
Imagine if I were to take a job where I have to teach the opposite.
You're like, eat
That's
your
like, I think
Cheerios.
of,
That's how to be healthy.
yeah, imagine
Yeah.
that would be a worse job than a prostitute
Yeah.
who's exchanging sex for money, you know? Because at least there's honesty there. It's like, listen, sex for money, very simple, very transparent. Nobody's lying to the other person.
Yeah.
But for me to know what I know and to go and have to take a job where I have to lie, is there any lower form of existence? I don't think so. So no, I teach them all about the carnivore diet. They just, I think Miami-Dade hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah.
But my professor's reviews are like the best of the best. It's like 5.1 out of 5, which is I didn't even know you could go higher than 5 over 5. So I have a waiting list. They keep expanding my classes. It used to be that you can only have 30 students at one time in a class. And then it's like everybody wants to take, because it's online. So of all the campuses of Miami-Dade College, they can all take my class. So everybody wants to be in this class. And so then it was okay, 35, 40. And now this past semester, I was having 50 students a section.
Oh, wow.
It's like, aren't you like not supposed to do that? But hey, whatever. I'm happy you guys want to join my class. And yeah, students are I tell them I'm like jealous because I wish I had a professor like me back when I was 18. It would have saved me so much trial and error and so many I wouldn't have continued my education. I definitely wouldn't have continued to get my doctorate because you lose all respect for your professors. You lose all respect for the system once you realize how wrong this information is. It's a
Yeah.
waste of time, waste of money, waste of energy, and it's almost criminal at this point.
Yeah. I'm with you. And it's unfortunately like it's not just it's like, as you were saying earlier, we'll jump into this rabbit hole a little bit. It's just like academia in general. Like
Yeah.
I see it so much. I mean, in everything, in science and philosophy and medicine, and I mean, like look at everything that happened with COVID and just how like absolutely crazy people were about like follow the science, blah blah blah. But you're like, there is no science. It just came out. There's like, where is the research? Where is the data?
Right,
Where like, what is anyone basing this off of? You're basing
right.
it off of a
Shane,
hypothetical
I
thing
need
of
you to stop your misinformation right now,
I
Shane.
know,
What,
I
what,
know.
what are you trying to say?
And it's crazy. I've been having so many conversations with people on the show just about like how it's just, everything's so ingrained where it's like if you go against everything is so narrative driven, I guess, right? It's like it really is like the Matrix. It's like here's what you're supposed to believe about nutrition. Here's what you're supposed to believe about philosophy. Here's what you're
Right,
supposed to believe about
right.
science. Here's
Here's
and
here's what Nestle wants you to believe about nutrition, right? Here's what
exactly.
Pfizer
Yeah.
wants you to believe about your healthcare. That's the real thing. It's like who has the most amount of profit and money can drive the narrative. This is why the food companies spend 11 times more money to fund basic nutritional research as compared to our NIH.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? You know, they figured out that if they can just fund researchers, and it's so easy to do that because funding money comes hard for us researchers, right? And so they figured out, okay, easy money comes from the food companies. All you have to do is stay on their good side, and you get tons and tons of papers that are completely useless junk science. But the conclusion is like, oh, eating more fiber is better than eating Snickers bars 24/7. Those are
Right.
the kinds of people they're studying. You know, they wouldn't dare study a carnivore, a real carnivore like you and I. Like they would never put us in a study.
Sure.
Who's going to benefit? Who's going to fund that study? Because we know what the results are going to be. Who's going to fund that study? Ranchers are barely hanging
Yeah.
by a thread, you know?
Yeah.
They don't have the money yeah.
I mean, and it's like it's so hard, right? Because even myself, like there's this little voice in the back of my head when I'm doing carnivore. So I guess I've been I'll say I guess I've been carnivore like maybe 6 or 7 months now. And before I was doing carnivore, I was vegetarian for a while, and I felt really good for a while actually, and then I started to feel pretty terrible. But one of the biggest things that I've noticed is I have like Crohn's in my family, and I have a lot of digestive issues. And when I was doing the vegetarian, I had constant digestion issues, and I think part of what happened was I was not absorbing anything that I was eating. And so I just got like shredded. I got really, really, really lean. And I was
Mm,
like, I felt good for a while. And I think that eventually I became like malnourished, even though I was like hammering homemade wheatgrass juice shots and doing like all this juicing and all this stuff. I think that my body just really was literally absorbing nothing. So I think like eventually that
yeah.
malnourishment caught up with me and I started to feel really bad. But there's still like this part in the back of my mind where I'm like, what if I'm wrong about carnivore? Like, what if every
Yeah.
steak that I eat, what if all this like, and I source like grass fed stuff and do grass fed lamb, and I always try to pick the best ingredients that I can. I'm like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just clogging my arteries and I just like,
Yeah.
I'm 34. What if I drop dead or have a heart attack in 10 years or 5 years because
Yeah.
I got this wrong, like, and then it's
Yeah.
hard because there's no, like you said, there's no research, there's no long term studies
Yeah.
on like what do
Well,
you, how
unless
do you feel
except
about that?
evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except our history. For
Sure.
99.99% of our existence, all we ate was red meat, and we had no heart disease. We had no
Yeah.
cancers. Our skeletons were taller. Our brains were actually bigger. Our skulls were larger to accommodate also that larger brain, which meant our jaws were larger, and we never had misalignment of the teeth. It was only when we stopped eating a carnivore diet around 10,000 years ago, we started harvesting grains and beans. All of a sudden, now you see a drastic drop in our health. And this is very well known. Just Google the agricultural revolution,
Right.
the health cost we paid, right? It was a good trade because we our main source of nutrition, large woolly mammoths and animals, went extinct, and there are many theories as to what happened. Climate change, overhunting, asteroid hit us. Point is, we didn't have enough nutrition from a carnivore diet. So it's like, are we going to starve to death, or are we going to be adaptable and figure out some other forms of calories? So that's what we did. We figured out we can get calories from other sources, but we paid a very heavy price for that.
Mm.
So that's why what I do for my clients, because a lot of my clients have the same doubts, especially if they're having cravings for something. It's like, how bad is an apple really? But if somebody has an autoimmune issue, then it's really bad for them, right? It
Right.
really depends. And so I have a playlist for them that I ask them to listen to on an occasional basis or regular basis. Not sorry, not occasional, very important, regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a client nutrition education playlist where I've added all of the mini documentaries or any content pieces that I can find that goes over the history of every single plant food that we're eating that we think is a natural food. It never existed.
I
Look at the
know.
wild
I
version of a
know.
cucumber, you know?
Yeah.
Lettuce, potatoes were tiny, bitter, mostly toxic. Like none of this food that we think of as food was ever present, ever
Right.
for millions of years, you know? So that is very helpful to realize. And then you can always get CAC scans and CTA, right? CT scans to make sure and kind of like give yourself the peace of mind that actually, no, you're much healthier than the vast majority of your peers, people your age that probably have a little bit more calcification, more plaque. So it's
Yeah.
easy to figure those things out. It's and then over time that increased education and the proof, the real hard data evidence that you have of your test results, then that's going to eventually get you more comfortable with this way of eating.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean it's like hard to deny because I've had a lot of I mean my digestion
Yeah.
despite like I said having Crohn's in my family, I've not had digestive issues since I've started. Whether I have fruit or whether I haven't had fruit, my digestion has never been better.
Yeah.
Sleep better, mentally just I've felt more focused. My skin just has looked like really good. I mean, I feel like I exercise a lot and I drink a lot of water, and there's things that I do that have helped me. Even though I'm 34, I get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, I thought you were in your mid 20s or whatever." I think that carnivore is has even more so. I have just like a different like my skin just feels better. It looks better too.
Mm,
So I mean, I felt really good. I definitely feel like this is something that I want to stick with. And as we were talking about, I've gone back and forth between like full keto or adding fruit. I'm definitely on the like vegetables are not good for me. Uh, I'm pretty
yeah,
sold on
especially
that
for Crohn's.
because every time I eat vegetables, I can immediately see the effects. And I don't want to go into
Yeah.
like too much detail, but it's immediate. And every once in a while, like I'll have a cheat meal because I like a Caesar salad and I just don't put croutons in it, but I make the
Mm.
dressing at home and I'll use like cold pressed olive oil and like real anchovies and um, that's like my cheat meal. And I mean I'll have half the time when I eat a Caesar salad, the next day I have digestive issues. So
Oh wow. Yeah.
um, but that's I just enjoy it, so I'm willing to have that
You're
every once
willing
in a
to
while.
pay
But
the price.
yeah, but that's the cheat meal. Like the cheat meal isn't it's not pizza anymore. It's like let me have a Caesar salad.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. I just, wish we have more studies, but even if they start doing them now, which Harvard has started, but like, oh, we need so much for us
Sure.
to have undeniable proof so that the dietary guidelines can be changed with ease.
Do you think it's possible? Do you even think it's possible? Like,
No,
right?
not anytime
It's like,
soon.
yeah,
It's like, and we're taught we're like way too progressive for all of this stuff. I think it won't change for the next 30 years minimum,
sure,
if not more. Yeah. There's just too much money at stake. You
yeah,
think Kellogg's and Nestle is gonna sit around, with all their money and sit around and wait as we change the guidelines away from their products and
sure.
towards more real whole foods? They're gonna fight.
Yeah, and that's like the thing that's so crazy, right? Is it's easy to look and say like there's a conspiracy to keep people um, sick, right? But it's
I don't
like,
think it's a conspiracy.
right, it's
No.
just more so like I want money. It's like our company wants money, and what produces us money is like, all right, we want people to eat these things, and they just don't really care
Yeah.
about the effects.
Yeah.
It's
There are a lot of people who just go through life wanting to have a balanced lifestyle.
right,
Maybe they're just genetically, very lean. They don't have real issues, so they've never had a reason to doubt the guidelines. So it's like, yeah, it's fine to eat bread, just have a piece of cake or have some balance or whatever. And those are the people who can have, they have no problem taking those jobs, in those
sure,
food companies, and just pushing for the advertisement and targeting the children. Like, oh, what's going to happen if we target children with, cereal with toys in them? So they come at it from just like kind of like a naive, I think, perspective.
yeah, it's just about the money
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, and they get good jobs. I mean, it's so easy to get hired in those food companies. I mean, I had Nestle wanted to hire me. I hadn't even finished my doctorate. They were already giving us their cards. I was like, the moment we are done, give us a call. We'd like to have you, But and then they give you the perks, the vacations and all of the little frills that come along with that. And I have a lot of dietitian friends of mine who they clearly are very unhealthy if you look at them, and but they don't care. They'll just spew out whatever the academy says just to be on the safe side, and they'll take those jobs. And I don't get it because like my brain just doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit of a rebel, and a little too blunt. I can't bite my tongue. It hurts. So I don't know. I can't understand what goes on in other people's brains. For me, it blows my mind.
sure. If we have somebody out there listening right now, and like let's say they're not on the carnivore train, they're not like, they're just average human being, right? If you take just the average American, the average person, and you could say, here are my top three tips. Here are the first three things I want you to do to get healthier. And it can be in general or it can be with diet. What are your top three? What are like the three
There's really
cornerstones?
one thing,
Okay.
one thing.
All right.
Get
It's easy.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Get those uncomfortable minutes.
Hmm.
The more you get uncomfortable, I prefer cardio. I think is a good way to track it. You can't lie to yourself how much discomfort it's like if it was 5 minutes of discomfort today, you can't lie to yourself if you track it. It means tomorrow you can do six because you've
Sure.
already done five. You're not gonna stop short at three when the day before you've done 5 minutes. Once you have that, you build that brain up again. Even by the way, if you don't have a dopamine deficit, you can still build that dopamine higher. You will naturally reduce self administration of drugs and addictive behaviors. They've actually done studies with rats. I remember posting about it on my Instagram. I should film a YouTube video on that because I think it's just such an important study. Rats given a wheel to exercise on versus rats who didn't have a form of exercise in their cages. The ones who moved naturally reduced their self administration of heroin.
Hmm.
They just weren't interested in the heroin that was given to them ad libitum as much as they wanted. Versus the ones who couldn't have access to the working out, they got their dopamine hit in a different way from the drug. So if you just focus on upregulating that brain and getting uncomfortable, you will naturally feel kind of like that taking that limitless pill, that movie with Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get that, but if you earn it, you don't have to crash afterwards. It just people they it's much easier not to earn it, to get those cheap hits of dopamine, which end up destroying the brain. So what you want to do is build the brain back up. But of course, it's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning. Eventually, you start getting used to it. You start getting used to this
Yeah.
feeling. So for me, if I don't get those minutes in the day, I feel like, wow, I wasted a day. Like, what did I do today? I didn't progress because I know that that is the central thing that's going to influence how easy it is for me to eat right, how easy it is for me to be productive. I'm four, five, six, 7 times more productive. I don't waste time. I don't have the urge to pick up my phone anymore. It
Yeah,
can be right next to me. I don't install trackers, timers, apps that will stop me from none of that. Why? I have enough self control easily because I've already built it up in an uncomfortable way. But now for the rest of the day, everything's easy,
sure. Great
you know?
advice. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Very good. So I want to shift at kind of the end segment here. I always like to ask my guests a little bit about like their personal habits and lifestyles, just because anytime I, find someone interesting enough or, someone has some value to bring to the listeners, I like to look at maybe things that they're doing personally that,
Mm.
listeners can pick up. So the first thing I always like to ask about is, do you have any daily habits that you run through?
Yeah, I guess you already know what I'm going to say, right? The most
Mm-hmm.
important part. I try to get it first thing in the morning, roll out of bed and train. But even if sometimes, like say this morning, I had an early interview. Um, my I destroyed my treadmill. I just bought a new one, so we're waiting on it to get delivered in 4 days. I'll have a new,
Yeah, it
so I
sounds like
don't
you
have.
need like a really badass treadmill. You're like gonna kill that thing.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I got one that's faster and better than the one that I had.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the number one thing in terms of a non-negotiable that I gotta have in my day. Um, and for me, I used to be all about morning routines, evening routines, do this, do that, a gazillion things. It was just trying to work around the dopamine deficit, trying to escape getting uncomfortable. It's like, okay, well, maybe this is what I'm missing. Maybe this is what I'm missing. Da-da-da. And then once you put that in place, once you actually fix the dopamine, I don't need to have routines anymore. I have mental clarity. My memory is sharp. Creativity is through the roof. And so I just know what I got to do. I just am like a robot, like a machine for the rest of the day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm assuming, I'm guessing, right? We haven't talked about it, but I'm guessing that you probably read fairly regularly as well.
I
Um,
do educate myself. I'm a huge nerd. I've always been like that. Yeah.
what would your top two book recommendations be if you pick two books out of all the books you read, said, "Hey, these are what I recommend."
Huh. Books that I recommend. Wow, there's so many. It's so difficult. Um, The Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton, is a fantastic book about how your thoughts can actually change your DNA and your
Mm,
genes. And it's just how much what you believe is the real strength and how much it influences the material and physical world around you. I think that was a life-changing book for me. And then wow, there's so many.
yeah,
I
I know it's
can't.
tough.
There's just too much. I mean, David Goggins' books, obviously, you knew I was gonna say that. The Carnivore Diet book, I think once you have certain basics, the mindset, the diet, the training, that's it. You're set.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll definitely have to check out the Biology of Belief.
Yeah.
The author, I know I've heard his name before, but I've never read any of his work. So
Yeah,
going
he
on my
was
list.
a professor of medicine at Stanford back when they had just started doing research in stem cells, and he would see how his stem cells in the petri dish would be so influenced by their environment, whatever he put in the petri dish, and then but he would have to go and teach his medical students the textbook information stating that genes are your destiny. And it's like that's clearly not true. And eventually, quit that job and started writing books, and he's very well known. He's kind of like a bridges like the spiritual world with the science world, how they both
Awesome.
work together, and how if you look at our atoms, if you look at the atom, the more you magnify it, the close and the bigger of a picture you get of the smallest components of an atom. What are they, like quarks and things like that?
Yeah. Hmm.
They lose their physical characteristics and they start functioning more like a wave as opposed
Yeah.
to like solid matter where light can't pass or like they're solid. It's just some mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
People, if you're not, yeah, it's a very, it's a long book. So maybe you can start by watching a presentation. He's got multiple presentations on it. Some of them are 2 hours long, goes over the main elements of the book, or like 1 hour long is a more of a, summary of the book. I think that's very helpful to get the gist of it, and then you can dive into the book.
Sure. Great. Sounds like a great recommendation.
Yeah.
I'm adding it to my list.
Yeah, you'd
Uh,
love it.
what about like personal heroes? Do you have any personal heroes or anyone that you look up to?
Goggins.
I knew you were gonna say Goggins. It's the Goggins
Right.
show.
Right. It's a Goggins show. Yeah,
Yeah.
Goggins is definitely and yeah, I mean I have a lot of people that I look up to, of course, in different areas. I think, success leaves clues and you have to always uh be paying very special attention to what's working, not what you would like for it to work, but what is actually working. Because you don't want to reinvent the wheel in every single thing you want to do. But yeah, I would say Goggins is the main one.
I've talked about him several times in the show with several different guests, and I think that while he's incredibly radical, right? I think it's super radical what he's saying. I definitely think that like Goggins is a he's like a medicine for the sickness of like how like soft our culture has become, right? It's like you
Yeah,
have to have something so radical to kind of fight
exactly.
against that.
He's
And
not
it's
radical. It's just people have gotten so soft that they think that that's
yeah,
radical. Like
yeah,
that should be normal.
sure.
Yeah. And the thing is, you don't have to go from 0 to 100 miles. You can just the journey from 0 to 10 miles will transform your life in a way. You'll be a completely different person just to hit that goal. And
Yeah,
then maybe it would take you 2 hours to do those 10 miles. Eventually, you can get it done in 1 hour. So it's not like it's a large investment of your time. But over time, you're just literally transforming your brain, which is transforming every aspect of your life,
right.
everything.
Yeah, so true. And the last question that I had for you, this is the one that, tends to stump people a little bit, but if you could hop in a time machine, go back in time, talk to a younger you. I always say teenage years because I just feel like that's where we're really lost a lot of times.
Right.
And you could give some advice to a younger version of you. What would the
Mm.
advice be? What would the piece of advice be?
Hang in there. Your struggle is your greatest advantage. Everything
Mm,
you're going
yeah,
through right now that you can't see a way out of, this is going to be exactly why you're gonna be successful on a whole other level, way more than anybody else.
great advice. That's the I think that's definitely the most popular answer so far is like some version of like just hang in there or just believe or just keep going because I think it's so easy for us to get fixated on the obstacles in our path or to get fixated on the things that are difficult and we feel like it's never going to end and it's this terrible experience, but I feel like every time I've gone through something like that, when I look back on that experience, I'm like I'm so not necessarily like glad because sometimes there are regrets that are are like I'm not happy that that thing happened, but it's like I look back at that and I'm like I would not be the human being that I am today without that experience, and it
Yeah,
inevitably causes this growth, right? The discomfort that we seek causes this growth on a personal
that's
level.
how you grow the fastest.
Yeah.
Einstein, I think, I'm not sure if that was his quote, but something along the lines of, "You never pay more than for the things you get for free." When you get
Mm-hmm.
an easy life, those are the people that they pay the most eventually,
Yeah.
you know? And they don't have that resiliency. They have those limiting beliefs. They're just too realistic, too practical, and they never really end up changing the world. They
So
had it
true.
too easy. Yeah, they
Yeah.
peaked. It's kind of like the people who peaked in high school. This the common
Yes.
idea we have, like in movies. It is true, though. It's so
Yeah.
true.
It's like they were the prom king, they were the captain of the high school football team, and then like 5 years later they got this huge beer belly and they're working in a factory and they got 10 kids that are
Yeah.
running around screaming. And
It's true. They don't know
yeah.
what hardship was. It never gave them the hunger to earn for more because they always had what they wanted. So they didn't develop that hunger to strive for more. They didn't develop the resilience to push through the discomfort of actually progressing in life. There's just so many things that go along with that. You kind of get this sense of entitlement. Things should be given to you. So I don't know. I think there's so many things explain why it's just such a common occurrence for when people have it easy. But it's kind of like the saying, right? Good times create weak men create hard
Hmm.
times create strong men, something like that. I don't know
Yeah.
why it's not with women, but it's okay. Well, we're
Well,
not gonna
we were,
turn this into a yeah.
yeah, it was just from a time where like, men ran everything. There weren't any women running things yet. So
Yeah, not yet, but we're changing things.
yeah, it's definitely changing. So I think it's, a good spot to wrap up. I wish I had more time with you. I could have gone, there's a lot of rabbit holes I could have gone down with you. Maybe I can get you back on at some point, but if anybody wants to look you up, learn more about your work, carnivore diet, your coaching, like should someone reach out to you? How would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so it's very easy. You can check out my YouTube channel, Dr. Sarah Zaldivar, Sarah Zaldivar. I think my name is showing up. I'm not sure on the screen. And Instagram at Dr. with an H Zaldivar. So basically my name. It's very easy to find me. You can email me at drsarahzaldivar@gmail.com, but you will find all the content there on my Instagram. I do have the pinned posts for the coaching if you're interested. Yeah, it's rather easy to find me. drsarahzaldivar.com is my website. It's a little bit down right now. I was in the process of switching it from HostGator onto Squarespace, so I've transferred the domain onto Squarespace, but I actually have to dedicate time to like populate it a little bit, at least with the coaching information there.
Sure.
And I haven't done that just quite, but I do have the domain. It's there. It'll always be mine. I'm never letting it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed speaking with you. You got my wheels turning a little bit more about the dopamine stuff. So I really appreciate speaking with you, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening to the Renaissance Wisdom podcast, and hopefully you learned at least one lesson on today's episode. Our mission here is to uncover practical wisdom to create a better way of living for our audience. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us by leaving the show a review on your podcast platform of choice and by giving it a share on social media. This really helps us to grow our audience and to continue to add more episodes. If you are interested in learning more, please check out our website at renaissance-wisdom.com or check out the book that started it all, Renaissance Wisdom: How to Flourish in the Modern Day, now on Amazon. Thank you again, and may wisdom be your guide.